The focus of this lesson is to talk about non-contingent reinforcement. Non-contingent reinforcement, or NCR for short, is a proactive intervention that provides access to known reinforcers regardless of the student's behavior. Simply put, the student doesn't have to earn the reinforcer. The student is given access to a reinforcer, so undesirable behaviors to gain access are decreased. This is an easy-to-implement strategy that can be put into place in any classroom. For the purpose of this lesson, we're going to focus on positive and negative non-contingent reinforcement. Let's start with looking at the types of reinforcers. A positive reinforcer is providing a student something they perceive as desirable that maintains or increases future rates of a specific behavior. A high five, a hug, a preferred activity, a positive note home, and verbal praise are all examples of positive reinforcement, assuming that these interventions increase future rates of the desired behavior that warranted their provision. Negative reinforcement involves lessening or removing something students perceive as undesirable that maintains or increases future rates of a specific behavior. For instance, if a student is always trying to avoid homework, giving a free homework pass contingent on task completion in the classroom setting could function as negative reinforcement if it maintains or increases rates of task completion in the future, as it allows the student to escape homework assignments. Once you've identified whether to use positive or negative reinforcement, you'll provide reinforcement for the student whether or not a target behavior is demonstrated. Let's look at an example. Keaton is a very busy first grader who loves having the teacher's attention as much as possible. He sometimes demonstrates undesirable behaviors to gain access to teacher attention. It was suggested to the teacher that they provide as much attention for Keaton as possible. It could be having him sit right next to her during circle time or letting him hold her hand at the front of the line in the hallway. The key is, it didn't matter what Keaton's behavior looked like. She still had to provide him with frequent access to teacher attention through non-contingent reinforcement. Over time, Keaton's undesired behaviors began to decrease because he was being provided the reinforcement he was seeking consistently. In other words, engaging in problem behaviors to access teacher attention became irrelevant, as Keaton was already accessing frequent teacher attention. NCR should be distributed on a specific schedule. Fixed interval and variable interval schedules of reinforcement, two common schedules of reinforcement used when implementing NCR procedures, involve providing students with reinforcement at the conclusion of predetermined time intervals. While fixed interval reinforcement schedules involve the delivery of reinforcement after a set amount of time, variable interval reinforcement schedules involve the delivery of reinforcement after different amounts of time revolving around a specific average. For example, a classroom teacher may deliver verbal descriptive praise every 20 minutes for a student whose problem behavior consists of leaving the classroom or school setting without teacher permission to access the teacher's attention, usually around every 30 minutes, as determined through data collection. The teacher could also use a variable interval 20-minute reinforcement schedule to provide reinforcement through teacher attention initially after 18 minutes of instruction, next after 22 minutes of instruction, and again after 20 minutes of instruction, meaning that reinforcement is delivered approximately every 20 minutes. Essentially, by providing students with frequent access to the same type of reinforcement they previously accessed by engaging in the problem behaviors, there's often less of an incentive for the student to exhibit problem behaviors. Thus, engaging in problem behaviors becomes unnecessary and irrelevant as the student's needs are already being met. The initial schedule of reinforcement as part of the intervention should be determined based on data collected related to the target behavior. Reinforcement can be gradually faded over time. Now, since we may unintentionally reinforce occurrences of problem behaviors through NCR, we want to consistently collect and analyze data after implementation to ensure that undesirable behaviors are not increasing. The most important thing about NCR is that it must be exactly that, non-contingent. A contingent reinforcement happens when, and only when, a behavior is demonstrated. Non-contingent reinforcement is delivered on a specific schedule regardless of behavior.